This Day in Sports History. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network, where you can find more great podcasts and great info at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's August 6th, and on this day in 1990, Wade Boggs drank 73 beers on a flight. Maybe. So this story has become legend. And like a lot of legends, sometimes things get a little out of control, people start playing hard and fast with the facts, and then you start to wonder if any of this story is real. Well, this tale is so big that It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did a take on it, with Boggs making a guest appearance. So, first off, Wade Boggs says this happened.
Yeah, all the stories are true. Yeah, they're all true, and so the record was 73.
All right, so let's talk a little Wade Boggs first. 18-year career in the majors, 12-time All-Star, 5-time batting champ. He won the Silver Slugger Award winner 8 times and a World Series title once with the Yankees in 1996. And of course, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2005. Boggs was, and probably still is, a world-class beer drinker, and if there was a beer-drinking Hall of Fame, he'd be a first-ballot guy. The man loves Miller Lite a lot. I mean, I like Miller Lite, it's my daily drinker, but 2 is good for me now. 20 years ago, maybe a 6er, but not Wade Boggs. When Boggs would travel with the team, he'd be drinking in the airport, on the plane, and then once it landed, more beers out on the town that night. And then he'd go out the next day and play like an all-star. His teammates backed up the stories of his prolific beer consumption, but the story that may have happened on this day is, according to Boggs, the record. Now, the way he tells the story is that it was a Boston to LA flight, and they'd played the Angels the following day, with Mark Langston on the mound. In one telling, he said it was 88 or possibly 89, but I could not find a cross-country flight from Boston to LA that the Red Sox made either of those years. Now, they obviously played the Angels, but they were in Oakland or Seattle first. Also, Langston's first year with the Angels was 1990. He'd been with the Mariners prior to this. However, there was a Boston to LA flight on this day in 1990 with Mark Langston on the mound for Game 1 of the series the following day. So if this is not it, it's at least the closest thing to matching the scenario that Boggs talked about. Now, according to Boggs, he was playing cards with some guys on the flight and was sipping on Miller Lites. And about halfway through the flight, one of the guys said, "Hey, Boggsy, do you know you've had 51 beers so far?" To which Boggs responded, "Oh yeah? Well, let's see how many we can get." And so he kept pounding away until they landed with a tally of 73. But hang on a second, he wasn't done yet. After getting off the plane, getting the bags, getting to the hotel, they went out to eat and drink a little bit more. Boggs says his final tally for the entire day was 107 beers. And then the next day, he went 2 for 5 with a double and an RBI off Mark Langston, which is similar to his retelling. He said he had 2 doubles, but seriously, who else but Wade Boggs and Andre the Giant would be able to consume anywhere close to that amount and still be able to get vertical the next day, let alone go 2 for 5 in a 6-3 Red Sox win? So if you thought that was going to be the end to beer and baseball in this episode, you would be wrong, because another guy who liked to drink and get a little crazy was Billy Martin. Well, on this day in 1969, Martin slugged one of his own players, and I find this story absolutely fascinating. And think about it for a moment. Can you imagine any other job where you could slug one of your employees and keep your job? Add to that This story did not appear on the front page of the Minneapolis sports section until 5 days later. Now, if something like this happened, it would be on social media within 2 minutes, and Martin would be fired before he got back to the hotel. Anyway, at this point, Billy Martin is the manager of the Minnesota Twins. The Twins had played on the road in Detroit on this night, and Twins pitcher Jim Perry pitched a 3-hit complete game in a 3-1 win against the Tigers. This was the third game in a 4-game series, so as ball players and managers did back in the late 60s and 70s, and I suppose since we talked Wade Boggs earlier, into the 90s, they went out for a couple of beers after the game. Now, in Detroit at this time was Lindell AC's, and Lindell's is considered the original sports bar in America. In fact, Billy Martin gave some tips on how to decorate the place when he played for the New York Yankees back in the 50s, saying, hey, you should add some photos of ball players in here and actual game memorabilia to the walls, like jerseys, balls. It was often compared to New York's Toots Shores. So, back to the altercation that happened on this night. It actually started a day or two earlier. Twins pitcher Dave Boswell said that Martin had orchestrated one of the oldest pranks in baseball, the hot foot, which is simply a way of lighting a player's shoe on fire with their foot still in that shoe, and doing it in a way to not reveal yourself as the lighter of the fire. Also, you're not looking for a conflagration here, just a small little match-size flame, enough to provide a little bit of uncomfortable warmth. Well, Boswell said that the hot foot he had been on the receiving end of had given him a blister on that foot. And when he was asked to run 20 circuits of the outfield warning track earlier in the day on the 6th by Martin, Boswell completed 2 and then said the blister on his foot was absolutely killing him. He couldn't and he wouldn't keep on going. Well, words were exchanged. Nothing more happens, really. Game is played, Twins win. They go to Lindell AC's afterward to enjoy the rest of the night. Now, at that point, Boswell apparently did not know who had orchestrated the hot foot until it was revealed at the bar that it had actually been Billy Martin. Boswell left the bar steaming mad, and a teammate, Bob Allison, went out to calm him down. Now, Boswell was well known for saying, I'm good at 2 things, pitching and fighting, and he showed off his boxing skills to Allison firsthand by punching him in the gut, lifting him out of his expensive alligator shoes. When Allison was on the ground, he kicked him in the gut. Martin heard what was going on outside the bar, and he went out to stop it. Now, according to Martin, when he got outside, Boswell ripped off his shirt and started swinging at Billy. He landed a shot to the side of Martin's head and one to the ribs. Martin made a quick assessment of the situation he was in and started wailing on Boswell, hitting him in the stomach, the mouth, and he kept going north with shots to the nose and the eye. He said Boswell bounced off the wall of the alley, and then Martin hit him again. He was down for the count when he hit the ground. Boswell did require some medical attention and a little dental work. He needed somewhere between 20 and 50 stitches, depending on the accounts that I read. Boswell had a few chipped teeth, 2 black eyes, and a handful of bruised ribs. It may be tough to understand in today's world of TikTok and Instagram and non-stop news coverage, but this incident did not actually get reported in the paper for a week when it finally came out on the front page of the sports section. And like I said earlier, Martin did not get fired. The Twins looked into it and determined to take no action against Boswell or Martin. Boswell went on to win 20 games that season with 195 strikeouts and a 3.23 ERA. The Twins won 95 games that year despite the seeming dysfunction, and they finished atop the AL West. In an interview years later, Boswell said his favorite manager he ever played for was Billy Martin. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. Uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. John Mahaffey is not really a household name, even if you happen to know golf history really, really well. But on this day in 1978, John Mahaffey pulled off an incredible comeback to win his first and only major golf title. After close calls and faltering finishes had denied him in major tournaments in 75 and 76, Mahaffey actually considered giving up the Pro Tour and trying something else. But he kept after it, and his hard work and dedication paid off for him finally on this day. The 78 PGA Championship was played at Oakmont, and after a 75 on day one, Mahaffey's name was nowhere near the leaderboard. But like Mahaffey's mentor, Ben Hogan, he hit the range afterward and found his game by simply digging it out of the dirt. He started aligning himself a little differently, and that, along with a hot putter, produced rounds of 67 and 68 to get him at least within sight of the leaders on the final day. He was still 7 shots behind Tom Watson, but with a hot putter, anything can happen. And it did. He holed 3 long birdie putts on the front 9 to cut into Watson's advantage, and then on the 10th, he dropped a 45-foot bomb for another birdie and followed that up with a 25-footer on the 11th. That, coupled with a now stumbling Watson, and they were tied by the 13th. It went back and forth over the final few holes, but it was actually Jerry Pate who had a chance to win the tournament on the 18th, but his par putt missed, putting him in a 3-way tie with Mahaffey and Watson and into a sudden death playoff. The trio parred the first playoff hole, and then on the second, Mahaffey striped his drive down the left side of the fairway, hit his approach to within 12 feet. Pate found trouble in the deep rough, and Watson's birdie try came up a little bit short. That set up Mahaffey to win it.
Again, the battle of nerves picks at Mahaffey's wits. He has been unable to win the big one. A man who has squandered opportunities. It was time to put the past out of his mind. His putt hits dead center.
Mahaffey's win capped off the greatest final day comeback in PGA Championship history. For Watson, the 78 PGA was the closest he ever came to winning the Wanamaker Trophy. When his career was over, it was the only piece of hardware missing from his trophy case, denying him the career Grand Slam. And on this day in 1926, 18-year-old American Trudy Ederle became the first woman to swim the English Channel. Ederle, who went by Trudy, had been an Olympian in the 1924 Paris Games. She'd won a gold and 2 bronze medals. On this day, she began her historic swim a little after 7 a.m. at Grenay in France, swimming toward Dover in England. At this point in time, only 5 men had successfully crossed the channel, with numerous unsuccessful attempts along the way. There were, and still are, myriad challenges of swimming the channel, like 6-foot swells, changing tides that change every 5 or 6 hours, cold water, and lots of jellyfish. Trudy had actually attempted this feat back in 1925, but she had been unsuccessful, getting the tides wrong, and though she wanted to continue, her trainer told her to stop. She also wore a traditional swimsuit that got bogged down and chafed her skin in that attempt in 25. So for attempt number 2, she had designed her own suit, which was a much lighter 2-piece, and she slathered herself with grease. The British press was very interested in Trudy's attempt, and the first usage of a wireless transmitter being used to describe a sporting event. Reporters on a following tugboat provided details on her progress to an eager audience on the opposite shore. When she finally got to the shore of Kingsdown, England that evening, there were hundreds who had been listening on the radio there to cheer her on. She was exhausted and had trouble pulling herself out of the water and onto the beach to officially complete the journey. But she pushed on, and crawled onto the beach, swimming a distance of 35 miles in 14 hours, 39 minutes. It was the fastest time recorded at that point, besting the previous mark by about 2 hours. One journalist reporting the scene said she looked like a boxer who'd been punched a lot. The rough water pounded her in the face on her journey. Her tongue was swollen from the salt water, and she had numerous jellyfish stings on her body. There was one issue with an immigration official, though. Ederle did not have her passport, nor did any of the support personnel on the boat have their passports. Her arrival was delayed for a bit until she promised to present her papers to the proper authorities the following morning. Ederle came home a national hero, feted with a ticker tape parade in New York City, the first woman to ever receive that honor. President Calvin Coolidge called her America's best girl. She inspired generations of women to swim. In fact, the next 4 successful channel crossings after Trudy's on this day were completed by women. Ederle's record-setting time stood for 25 years until it was bested by an hour by another woman in 1951. Her story was made into a movie titled The Young Woman and the Sea, starring Daisy Ridley. It was released last year, and it's available to watch on Disney+. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. On this day in 1991, the first ever website went live. It was created by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN, the place that houses the Hadron Collider. Well, the primary purpose for the creation of the web was to share information between scientists working at universities and institutes around the globe. So, a little less than 2 years after this event, he released the software into the public domain, and websites began to spring up everywhere. The website that sprung up on this day is still around, though a bit basic, and you can check it out at info.cern.ch. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.